I found a life insurance policy in my name, $500,000. My signature was forged. I didn't say anything at first. I wanted to believe he still loved me. But the next thing I remember is waking up in a hospital bed too weak to speak and my husband blaming me for the pills in my blood. He almost got away with it. Welcome back to Granny's Truths, where we tell the stories they hoped you'd take to your grave. If you're new here, thank you for joining a community of wisdom, survival, and second chances. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. We love seeing this family spread across the world. Now let me tell you what really happened. I always thought my husband Franklin was just getting older like me. Slower to remember things, moodier in the mornings, more interested in watching old westerns than talking about the day. After 38 years of marriage, you get used to your partner's rhythms. They change just like seasons. But this was different, and it took me longer than it should have to see it. My name is Lorraine Price. I'm 64 years old, retired from the city library after nearly 3 decades. I've got 3 kids, 2 sons and a daughter who all live abroad now, working their own busy lives. Franklin and I have lived alone in this house for the past 5 years. It's quiet. Sometimes too quiet. He used to fill the silence with music, whistling, humming. Lately, the quiet has turned into something heavier. A silence I didn't recognize. Franklin started insisting on making my tea every night. First, I thought it was sweet. He never used to care about tea. Now he was brewing it like it was some special ritual. Chamomile mostly, sometimes peppermint. Always insisting I drink every drop. I joked that he must be trying to fatten me up or calm me down. He laughed, but the sound never reached his eyes. If you've ever lived with someone who stopped looking at you the same way, drop a heart in the comments. You know that feeling I'm talking about. There were other things too. Like the way he kept the computer to himself, always closing tabs the second I walked into the room. Or how he'd flinch if I touched the file drawer in the hallway. Or how he started standing in doorways without saying anything, like he was watching me and forgot to speak. Still, I told myself not to be silly. After all, we're older now. People change, bodies get tired, minds wander. One afternoon, I was in the study printing out a peach cobbler recipe I'd found online. The printer jammed, so I went to the print queue to clear it. That's when I saw it. A document sitting in the queue labeled L. Price Policy Confirmation. Curious, I clicked it open. What I saw nearly made me drop the mouse. It was a life insurance policy in my name. $500,000. Signed, dated, and notarized. But I had never signed anything. My hands went cold. I scrolled through the pages. The beneficiary was Franklin. Everything looked legitimate. There was even a digital signature next to my name, neat and smooth, just like mine. But it wasn't mine. I hadn't signed anything in years. I closed the window and stepped away from the desk like it might explode. I didn't confront him. I didn't even breathe a word of it to anyone. I went into the kitchen and baked the cobbler, set the table, smiled when Franklin walked in and kissed my cheek. But something had shifted inside me. Over the next few days, I started noticing more. My tea began to taste a little off. My body felt heavier. I was tired all the time, even after sleeping through the night. I started forgetting things, simple things like the day of the week or where I left my glasses. Once I couldn't remember how to use the microwave. I stared at it like it was something from outer space. One evening I was folding laundry when a wave of dizziness washed over me. The basket tipped and I grabbed the edge of the bed to steady myself. As I stood there breathing hard, I looked toward the hallway and there he was. Franklin just standing in the doorway watching me. He didn't say anything, just stared, his face blank, eyes glassy. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The room spun. Then everything went black. The next thing I remember was waking up in a hospital bed with fluorescent lights burning overhead. My head throbbed. My throat was dry. Machines beeped nearby. I turned slowly and saw Jasmine, my daughter, sitting at my bedside crying softly into her hands. She looked up startled when I moved. "Mama," she said. "You're awake." I tried to ask what happened, but my voice was too weak. She leaned closer. "You fainted. I found you on the floor. I came home early to surprise you and Dad. I didn't even tell him I was coming. I walked in and there you were just lying there." A doctor came in shortly after. He looked serious, not cold, just focused. He told me they'd run tests and found traces of non-prescribed sedatives in my system. Not enough to be immediately fatal, but enough to dull memory, coordination, and balance. "Any chance you mixed medications accidentally?" he asked, looking at Franklin. Franklin smiled too quickly. "Oh, she's been forgetful lately. She probably took the wrong pills. I've been telling her to organize them better. The doctor nodded, scribbled something down, and left. Jasmine stepped out to get some fresh air. Franklin leaned over me and whispered, "You gave them a scare, baby. Try not to make this worse than it is." I wanted to speak, to scream, but my mouth was too dry. My mind too foggy. I closed my eyes instead and waited for sleep to come. That night, back in the house, everything felt the same but wrong. Franklin tucked me into bed like nothing had happened. He brought me a fresh cup of tea. I stared at it, hands trembling. Jasmine came in and offered to stay the night. Franklin smiled and said, "That's a great idea. Your mama could use the company." I didn't touch the tea. Not that night. Not ever again. If you think something was wrong with that tea, write tea in the comments. If you think I was just being paranoid, write 1. But be honest with me. The hospital let me go the next morning, though my body still felt like it was made of soaked rags. The dizziness had faded, but my thoughts came in pieces like puzzle pieces scattered across the floor. Jasmine insisted I come home with her for a few days, but Franklin told the doctor we had everything under control. Said we lived just a few minutes from the hospital and that he'd keep a close eye on me. The doctor agreed, but not before repeating that I should avoid driving, cooking, or being left alone. At home, Franklin tried to slip back into normal. He smiled more, brought me flowers, kept asking if I wanted tea. I always said no, claiming I was too nauseous. Jasmine stayed for a few days and slept in the guest room. I don't think she trusted him either, but she didn't say anything yet. Not to me, maybe not even to herself. The nights were the worst. I'd lie in bed, wide awake, staring at the shadows on the ceiling. Every creak of the house made my chest tighten. Sometimes I'd wake up to find Franklin already standing over me, saying he was just checking. One time I caught him watching me sleep from the doorway. He didn't even flinch when I opened my eyes. On the 4th day, Jasmine offered to make breakfast. As she tried to open a drawer in the kitchen, the handle snapped off. "I'll check the garage for a screwdriver," she said. She was gone longer than expected. I figured maybe she was sorting through Franklin's mess of tools. He kept them jumbled in coffee cans and toolboxes all over the place. A few minutes later, she came back looking a little pale. "Did you find the tools?" I asked. She nodded, but something was off in her face. "Yeah, I think so." She didn't tell me what else she saw in the garage. Not then. That evening, I was resting in the living room when I felt a chill down my back. "Could I get some tea?" I called out. "Sure, Mama," Jasmine said from the kitchen. I heard the kettle hiss, the clink of mugs. Then I heard Franklin's voice. Too calm. "Jazz, your phone's ringing. It's buzzing on the counter. Might be work." "Oh, okay. I'll check," she said. I couldn't see them, but I heard her footsteps fade down the hall. Moments later, Franklin walked in with the tea. "Here you go," he said, setting the cup gently in front of me. "I thought Jasmine was making it," I said. She started, but I finished it while she checked her phone. I stared at the cup. Jasmine returned a minute later, wiping her hands. "It was spam," she said, annoyed. I gave her a faint smile and nodded. She didn't notice anything unusual. Not yet. I took 2 sips out of politeness, then set the cup down. My stomach twisted almost instantly. Something wasn't right. I pushed through the evening, pretending I was just tired. By morning, I couldn't move. Jasmine found me slumped over in bed, unresponsive, mouth barely able to form words. She shook me, screamed my name, begged me to open my eyes. I remember her voice. It was like hearing someone underwater. Muffled but desperate. She called 911. This time they didn't wait. The EMTs rushed me to the hospital. Jasmine rode in the ambulance. Franklin followed behind in his truck. At the hospital, they ran more tests. The doctor, a younger man this time, pulled Jasmine aside. "Do you know what she's taken recently?" "Just her regular meds," Jasmine said. "Why?" "Because she has high levels of a sedative in her system, enough to impair motor function and memory." "This isn't accidental." Jasmine's heart dropped. She looked at the tea, remembered the garage, remembered the bottles. Later, while Franklin sat in the waiting room with a newspaper in his lap and a bland expression on his face, Jasmine returned home alone. She went to the garage. She opened the same drawer again. This time, she looked more carefully. There were 6 full bottles, all different brands of sedatives, some over the counter, some prescription only. None had Lorraine's name on them. Most weren't even from this country. One had a faded overseas pharmacy label. Another had a handwritten sticker that said, "Use lightly." Jasmine took photos of everything. She lined the bottles up on the table and stared at them for a long time. Then she called the police. I didn't know any of that right away. I was too weak to talk, too foggy to ask questions, but I knew something had shifted. This time, Jasmine wasn't going to hush her instincts. She wasn't going to wait for someone else to step in. She was going to save me, even if it meant saving me from my own husband. Would you let this happen to your own mama? Tell me in the comments. I need to know someone out there is paying attention. I woke up in the hospital with Jasmine's hand wrapped around mine like a lifeline. My body ached in strange places, like even my bones had been frightened. I didn't remember the ride there. I didn't remember collapsing. All I knew was that my daughter's voice had been the thing to bring me back. The doctor came in with a new expression on his face this time. Not concern, but caution. He spoke to Jasmine first. I saw the way her eyebrows shot up. The way her mouth tightened into a firm line. When he left, she didn't say anything right away. She just sat beside me, rubbing my wrist gently like she was trying to keep my pulse steady with her fingertips. You were drugged, she said quietly. Again. Worse this time. I wanted to cry, but my tears felt trapped behind my eyes. Jasmine stood up, pacing the room. I knew something was wrong. I saw the bottles in the garage, Mama. I Googled the names. They were sedatives. I should have said something sooner. Her voice cracked. I didn't want to believe it. The next hour passed in a blur. A detective came in and spoke with Jasmine. She handed over the photos she'd taken of the bottles. She described the moment Franklin tricked her into stepping away from the tea, how he finished preparing it while she answered a fake phone call. She blamed herself. I tried to tell her not to, but the words wouldn't come out right. The police didn't waste time this round. They obtained a warrant and went straight to the house. Jasmine stayed by my side. I don't know what she was thinking in those quiet moments, but her hands never stopped trembling. By that evening, I was stable enough to be moved to a private room. Jasmine finally let herself rest for a while. I could see the dark circles under her eyes, the exhaustion of carrying too much for too long. I didn't want this for her. I didn't want her to be the one protecting me from someone who was supposed to be my protector. Later that night, Detective Sellers came back. He was kind but firm. He said they found multiple bottles of sedatives in the garage. Some opened, some sealed. Pills stashed behind canned goods in the pantry, even more hidden in a hollowed-out book in Franklin's office. The forgery on the life insurance policy matched his handwriting from other documents in the house. He's in custody now, Sellers said. He's not going anywhere tonight. I nodded slowly. I didn't feel relief. Not yet. Just a deep aching sorrow. How long? I whispered. Sellers tilted his head. How long what? How long was he planning it? Sellers hesitated, then said, long enough to be organized. This wasn't impulsive. I closed my eyes. 2 days later, I was released again. This time I went straight to Jasmine's apartment. She wouldn't let me go home. Said I needed real care, real peace, and real boundaries. I didn't argue. I was too tired to fight. And truthfully, I didn't want to see the inside of that house ever again. Sitting in Jasmine's guest room, I looked through my old journals, little scribbles I'd made when I couldn't sleep, notes about Franklin's strange behavior, his sudden obsession with managing our medications, his interest in every financial paper that came through the door. I hadn't realized I'd been documenting my own danger. Jasmine joined me in the room holding a small envelope. The detective dropped this off, she said. Said you might want to see it when you're ready. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside were printed photos. Photos the police had found in Franklin's private drawer. They weren't of me. They were of another woman, smiling, laughing, sitting at a diner table with Franklin. In some of them, his hand was on hers. In one, he was kissing her cheek. I recognized her. She went to church with us. A widow. Her husband passed last year. She always said hello to me after service. According to the note attached, Franklin had been seeing her for months, telling her I was sick, that he was preparing for a future with her. I felt like the floor had opened beneath me. Jasmine sat beside me, waiting. He wanted to replace me, I said almost in disbelief. He didn't just want me gone. He wanted to start over. Jasmine put her arm around me, silent. We didn't cry that night. We didn't speak. We just sat together, breathing in the weight of it all. I wasn't sure what hurt more, that he tried to kill me for money or that he planned to love someone else after burying me. But I was alive. And for the first time in weeks, I knew I wasn't alone. If you've ever been replaced before you were even gone, write replaced in the comments. Let me know I'm not the only one who's felt this kind of betrayal. The hardest part wasn't the arrest. It wasn't the hospital or the photos or even the betrayal itself. The hardest part was answering the phone when my oldest son called from the UK and asked me what happened. I didn't know how to explain that the man who helped raise him had tried to kill me. I didn't know how to say it out loud without feeling like the air was too thick to breathe. Jasmine did most of the talking. She told her brothers the basics about the hospital, the sedatives, the arrest. One of them broke down. The other didn't believe it at first, but when Jasmine sent them copies of the reports, the photos of the pill bottles, and the forged insurance document, the silence on the other end of the call was answer enough. I stayed off the phone after that. I barely slept. My appetite was gone. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Franklin in that hallway again, just watching, not helping, not calling my name, just waiting. A few days later, Detective Sellers stopped by Jasmine's apartment with a folder under his arm. He looked tired, like he'd been wrestling with something. Jasmine made coffee. We all sat down at the kitchen table. "There's something else," he said, placing the folder in front of me. We ran Franklin's name through National Case Archives. Something came up from 1993. I opened the folder. It was a death certificate. A woman named Clarice Wen, 52, died of sudden cardiac arrest in another state. Listed as Franklin Price's wife at the time. "I never knew he was married before me," I whispered. "Neither did we until we saw the records," Sellers said. "The circumstances around her death were vague. She passed in her sleep. No autopsy was done, but the insurance payout went to Franklin. Small policy, $35,000. I stared at the grainy black and white photo attached to the record. Clarice had soft features and a warm smile. Her eyes looked kind. There was a church bulletin tucked into the file, too. A funeral notice with a photo of Franklin standing next to her casket. "He married her for less than a year," Sellers continued. "She was a widow with no children, owned her home outright. He inherited everything." I felt the blood drain from my face. Jasmine reached for my hand under the table. "Did he ever mention her to you?" Sellers asked. "Never," I said. "Based on what we know," he said gently, "it looks like you weren't his first attempt." That night, I sat in Jasmine's living room wrapped in a quilt I'd crocheted 15 years ago. The TV was off. The room was quiet. I looked down at my hands and realized how much older they looked than the last time I really studied them. I used to be proud of these hands. They'd raised 3 children, stacked thousands of books, stirred countless pots of gumbo. Now they shook when I lifted a cup of tea. Jasmine came in and sat beside me. She didn't ask how I was. She just handed me a glass of water and a small plate with crackers and peanut butter. "You need to eat something," she said. I nodded and took a bite. "How long do you think he was planning this?" I asked after a while. She sighed. "Long enough to be organized. Long enough to hide everything in plain sight." "What if I hadn't found that document?" I whispered. "You did," she said. "And you survived." The next morning we met with the victim's advocate. She helped me fill out protective orders and walked me through what to expect during Franklin's arraignment. The state planned to charge him with attempted murder, insurance fraud, unlawful possession of controlled substances, and forgery. "He's not going to walk away from this," the advocate said. "Not this time." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to feel safe again, but safety felt like something I had loaned out and never got back. The arraignment was held on a gray Tuesday morning. Jasmine went with me. I wore the navy dress Franklin always said made me look strong. I didn't wear it for him. I wore it for me. I needed to remember that I still had pieces of myself he hadn't touched. We sat in the back of the courtroom. Franklin was brought in through a side door in a county jumpsuit. He looked smaller, somehow older. His hair was thinner than I remembered. He didn't look at me. The judge read the charges. Franklin's attorney pleaded not guilty on his behalf. The prosecutor listed the evidence: hospital records, sedative analysis, digital documents, witness statements, photos, recordings. Jasmine had written a formal affidavit. The judge listened quietly, then denied bail. As Franklin was led out of the room, he glanced back once. Our eyes met. I didn't look away. Afterward, Jasmine and I sat in the car for a long time. The rain had started falling, soft and steady against the windshield. "He's not coming back," she said. I nodded. "But I still have to come back." "From what?" "From him," I said. The next few weeks were quiet. I moved into a small one-bedroom unit in a senior complex not far from Jasmine's. It had bright windows and soft carpet and a little patio that caught the morning light. I brought my books, my favorite quilt, and the crocheted pillows I'd made over the years. I didn't bring any photos of Franklin. Jasmine helped me set up my meds in a locked dispenser. She checked in every evening. Sometimes we just sat and listened to the radio. I was still healing, still learning how to sleep through the night again. But the silence in my new home felt different now. It wasn't empty. It was mine. Life after Franklin's arrest didn't snap back to normal. There was no switch to flip, no clean slate to return to. Healing, I learned, was not about pretending it never happened. It was about learning how to live with what did. And some days I didn't feel like I was learning fast enough. I was just surviving moment by moment, breath by breath. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that survival is enough some days. Sometimes just breathing is an act of defiance. The senior unit was quiet, almost too quiet at times. The kind of silence that makes you remember everything you wish you could forget. I tried to keep a routine. Mornings were for tea and a walk around the courtyard. Afternoons for reading or crossword puzzles. Evenings, Jasmine would stop by or call to check on me. But the space between her visits felt hollow. I had once longed for peace, and now that I had it, it felt unnatural. One Sunday morning, I sat out on my little patio with a blanket wrapped around my legs and an old gospel station humming from the radio. The sun was gentle, the air warm. I almost drifted off until a knock at the front door startled me. Jasmine stepped inside, holding a manila envelope. She didn't smile. Her expression was calm but firm. "The detective sent this over," she said, placing it on the coffee table. "They're building the prosecution case. Said you might want to see it before trial." I opened it slowly. Inside were transcripts, photos, bank records, and copies of emails Franklin had sent to the woman from the church. Her name was Lydia, a recent widow. I remembered her soft laugh, her tendency to linger in conversation. I never suspected a thing. I read the words on the page in disbelief. Franklin had told Lydia that I was terminally ill, that our marriage had grown cold, that I was barely aware of what was happening anymore. He wrote things like, "Soon it'll just be the two of us. Be patient." There were dates, gift receipts, pictures of them together at diners in motel parking lots. He had planned a life without me while I was still very much alive. Jasmine watched me read. She didn't speak until I closed the folder. "Did you know her?" she asked. "Yes," I said quietly. "She used to hug me after Sunday service. Every week." Jasmine sat beside me, rubbing my shoulder. "You don't have to look through all of it." But I did. I had to. I needed to see the full truth to understand just how far gone he really was. The prosecutor later told us Lydia was fully cooperating. Once she found out Franklin was arrested, she came forward on her own. She had no idea what he was planning. Said she thought he was a good man in a sad marriage, that he told her I was already slipping away. She said she believed him because he seemed so calm, so certain. I didn't hate her. I pitied her. She was just another piece of his manipulation, just like me. In the weeks leading up to the trial, I tried to prepare myself. The prosecutor said I didn't have to testify, that my affidavit and the recordings and sedative reports were strong enough, but I wanted to speak. I needed the court and Franklin to hear my voice. The morning of the trial was cold, a late spring chill still clinging to the air. Jasmine picked me up early, dressed in a blazer and flats. I wore the navy dress Franklin once said made me look strong. I didn't wear it for him. I wore it for me. The courthouse lobby was bright and sterile. Every echo of a shoe made me flinch. We sat together, Jasmine's hand resting on mine. When it was time to testify, I took a deep breath and walked to the stand. I told them who I was, what I'd survived, how the man I married turned into someone I couldn't recognize. I spoke about the tea, the forged signature, the night I looked down the hallway and saw him watching me fall. I told them about waking up in the hospital and the doctor's voice and Jasmine crying at my bedside. I didn't cry until I stepped down from the stand. Not because of fear, but because of the quiet strength it took to speak those words out loud. The trial lasted just under 2 weeks. The jury deliberated for 1 day. Guilty on all charges. Franklin was sentenced to 25 years in prison with no chance of parole for 15. When the verdict was read, he barely moved. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. He just sat there like a man who lost a bet and already knew the outcome. I didn't look at him. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't need to. After the sentencing, the judge offered me the chance to speak again. Victim impact statement, they called it. So I stood. I said, "You tried to write me out of my own life, but I'm still here. You tried to erase me, and now you're the one fading. You wanted to live off my money. I plan to live on my terms." That evening, Jasmine and I sat on my patio, the sun slowly dipping below the buildings. She brought over a peach cobbler and some vanilla ice cream. We ate in silence, letting the wind move through the space between us. "You did it," she said. "No," I replied. We did. Later that week, I met with a lawyer. I'd already signed over everything into my name, what little Franklin hadn't touched. But I wanted more than separation. I wanted legal clarity, a signature, a statement, a clean break. I filed for divorce while he sat in a cell. I wasn't divorcing a husband. I was divorcing a ghost. And it felt like the first real breath I'd taken in years. Freedom, I learned, isn't just the absence of danger. It's the ability to breathe without waiting for the floor to drop out from under you. After the trial, after the sentence, after Franklin was led away in cuffs, I still didn't feel free. Not entirely. Not yet. Jasmine said it would take time. Healing wasn't a single act. It was 100 small ones strung together like lights across a dark room. I started with simple things. Morning tea that I brewed myself. A short walk in the garden outside my senior apartment. Letting the windows stay open at night without worrying who was listening. Some days were harder than others. I'd forget where I placed my keys or I'd tense up hearing a knock on the door. But the worst part, waking up from nightmares where Franklin was still hovering in the doorway, slowly faded. Jasmine had bought me a small night light shaped like a flower. Every time I turned it on, it reminded me of softness, of safety, of new beginnings. I wasn't alone. My sons flew in one at a time. They hugged me for too long. They apologized even though they had no reason to. We should have called more, one of them said, his voice cracking. We should have come home sooner. I forgave them without needing the words. They weren't to blame for the distance Franklin had worked so hard to maintain. One Saturday afternoon, I went to the courthouse with Jasmine and my attorney. The final divorce papers had been approved. I walked out with a stamped certificate declaring my legal freedom. I thought I'd feel giddy victorious. But what I felt was something deeper. Peace. The kind that lives in your bones. The kind you don't have to prove to anyone. Drop a heart if you know what real peace feels like. Not the kind you have to fight for every day, but the kind that just settles into your soul and stays. Back home, I started sorting through a box of old things I had nearly thrown away during the move. Inside was a letter from Walter, my father, written decades ago. He passed when I was just 23. The letter reminded me of strength, of what it meant to stand tall, even when everything around you tried to push you down. I held it in my lap and read it 3 times. Franklin used to talk about legacy like it was measured in bank accounts and life insurance. But I've come to believe legacy is measured in what you refuse to let die inside you. Dignity, grace, survival. I joined a local women's group that met every Friday. It wasn't formal therapy, but it was healing. One of the women had escaped a violent marriage. Another had been swindled by her own daughter. We sat in a circle of folding chairs and told the truth. No shame, no rushing, just truth. At the end of one session, a woman named Miriam leaned over and asked, "Do you ever feel angry?" I looked at her, surprised by how easily the answer came. No, not anymore. I don't want to waste another second being angry at someone who already lost everything. I meant it. The group later asked if I would share my story for a community newsletter. I said yes. I wrote every word in longhand, then typed it up on Jasmine's laptop. The title came to me just before I sent it off. He took out a life insurance policy on me, but I woke up just in time. It was published the next month. People reached out. Some called me brave. Some shared stories of their own. And a few, mostly older women, told me I'd help them realize it was okay to leave, even after a lifetime. I didn't respond to everyone, but I read every word. Spring came fast that year. The cherry tree outside my window bloomed in April. Its blossoms so full and white, they looked like something out of a dream. Jasmine and I sat under it one Sunday morning drinking lemonade and watching the petals fall. "Do you feel different now?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Lighter. What do you want to do next?" I thought for a long moment. "Life," I said. "Just live. Nothing grand, just honest, slow, peaceful living." I stood up and stretched. My joints cracked, but my heart didn't. It felt steady for once. As we cleaned up the cups and plates, Jasmine smiled and said, "You know, Mama, for someone who was supposed to go quietly, you sure made a lot of noise." I laughed full and deep. "He told me to go die in peace," I said. So I lived in defiance. And I'm still living. Like, comment, and subscribe because stories like mine deserve to be heard. Let me know where you're listening from. I want to know who's still out there hearing women like me. And if this story reminded you that silence doesn't mean weakness, share it with someone who needs to hear that today. Because sometimes the greatest act of rebellion is simply refusing to disappear.